The day my greedy son and his wife won $53 million in the lottery, they kicked me out with the words, "We don't need your pathetic pension cash anymore. Just go die somewhere else." They went pale when I laughed and said, "Sweetie, did you even read whose name is on that lottery ticket? If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from." Let me tell you how karma served the coldest dish of justice you've ever heard. 2 months ago on a sunny Tuesday morning in Riverside, California, I was standing in line at Garcia's Market doing something I'd done every week for 28 years. Buying my lucky lottery numbers at the same little corner store. Same combination I'd played since 1996. Same hope, same little wish to the universe above. My name is Helen Martinez, but folks call me Nana Helen. I'm 72, lost my husband Carlos 3 years back, and currently sleeping on what my son Diego and his wife Maria call their couch. Though most couches don't require you to pay $900 monthly rent just to exist. Buenos dias, Senora Martinez, called Roberto from behind the register. The young man always remembered my weekly visit, even brought his own kids to meet me sometimes. The same numbers today? Always the same, Mijo. I handed him my crumpled $5 bill, watching him print those familiar digits. 8-15-22-29-33 with the red ball 11. 8 for the August day Carlos proposed. 15 for Diego's birthday in the 15th. 22 for our apartment number where Diego took his first steps. 29 for the day we became citizens. 33 for our wedding anniversary. 11 for the number of grandchildren I hope to spoil someday. Back then, those numbers felt like family memories wrapped in hope. I never dreamed they'd become my ticket to freedom from family members who saw dollar signs instead of love. "Maybe today's your day, Senora," Roberto said with his warm smile, handing me the ticket. "From your lips to God's ears, Roberto." Walking back to the apartment complex where Diego and Maria lived, I passed the little house Carlos and I had rented for 30 years. The landlord had painted it bright blue after we moved out. Carlos would have laughed at that color. He always joked that our little yellow house looked like sunshine, a place where happy families lived and children learned to dream big and work hard for everything they wanted. The bitter truth was that I was now living with the child who'd grown up in that sunshine house, and he treated me like I was blocking his view of the sky. Maria's red Honda was parked crooked in their assigned space when I got back. Through the sliding glass door, I could see her pacing around the living room with her phone pressed to her ear, probably complaining to her mother about having to share their one-bedroom apartment with Diego's old-fashioned mother who didn't understand modern relationships. I slipped in through the side entrance, hanging my sweater on the hook by the tiny kitchen, the same hook where Diego used to hang his soccer cleats, where Carlos hung his work uniform, where families put their things when they actually felt welcome somewhere. "Helen, that you?" Maria's voice had that sharp edge she got whenever something bothered her, which seemed to be everything I did lately. "Just me," I replied softly, though part of me wanted to say, "Sorry for breathing in your sacred space." But I'd learned that sometimes keeping peace means swallowing your pride, even when it tastes like poison going down your throat every single day. The day Carlos passed changed my whole world, though it took time to see how cruel that change would become. Sadness has a way of making you blind to the people waiting to take advantage of your broken heart, especially when those people share your own blood. Carlos died on a rainy Thursday in March 2021. The funeral felt like watching someone else's life from far away. 47 years of marriage squeezed into 2 hours and a potluck lunch with sandwiches from the grocery store deli. Diego spoke beautifully about his father being a hardworking man who always put family first. Maria wore black and wiped her eyes when people were looking, though I'd never actually seen her shed real tears over anything that wasn't about money or her social media followers. "Mama, you can't stay in that tiny rental alone," Diego said as we drove home from the cemetery. "It's too expensive for one person." I was watching the palm trees blur past the window, remembering how Carlos and I used to take this same route to the beach when we were young and broke but happy. He'd hold my hand and talk about the apartment we'd get, the family we'd raise, the dreams we'd chase together. Money was never the most important part of those conversations. I've been taking care of myself for 70 years, I said. I think I can manage a few more. But, Mama, the rent keeps going up and your Social Security barely covers it. Maria jumped in from the driver's seat. At your age, living alone becomes risky. What if you get sick? What if you fall and nobody knows for hours? Her concerns sounded so real, so caring. I almost fell for it completely. Besides, Diego added, we've got that pull-out couch in the living room. You could help watch the kids when we have them over, and we're family. We should stick together. Help with kids that didn't exist yet. That should have been my first warning sign. Diego and Maria's apartment was in a newer complex across town, complete with a pool nobody used and a gym that stayed locked most of the time. They'd signed the lease 2 years earlier, stretching their budget to what Maria called an investment in our future, and what I secretly thought was way more than 2 people working retail jobs could actually afford. But what did I know? I was just a widow with a small savings account and 47 years of Carlos's careful planning tucked away. The living room couch was actually pretty comfortable. Navy blue fabric, a decent view of the courtyard where kids played. Soccer in the evenings. It'll be perfect, Maria said, fluffing the cushions like she was presenting a luxury hotel suite. Your own little space, but with family right here if you need anything. The first few weeks were actually nice. I cooked traditional meals that Diego remembered from childhood, cleaned the apartment without being asked, and stayed quiet in my corner when Diego and Maria needed alone time. They seemed happy to have me around, though I noticed they never offered to help pay for the groceries I bought or the utilities that went up with 3 people instead of 2. By the second month, the little requests started coming like gentle rain that slowly soaks everything. Helen, could you run to the store for milk? We're both working late. Helen, could you wait here for the internet guy? Someone needs to sign for the installation. Helen, could you clean the bathroom? You used to face the world without Carlos by my side. I should have remembered what Carlos always told me. Helen, when people start treating you like a servant, it's because they've stopped seeing you as family. By the time summer arrived, their real faces started showing. Maria's requests became commands, and Diego developed this amazing ability to disappear whenever there was conflict in the air. Helen, we need to discuss money, Maria announced one Tuesday morning, spreading papers across their small dining table like she was running a board meeting. What kind of discussion? I asked, though my heart was already sinking like a rock. Living expenses, you're part of rent, utilities, food, everything that costs money around here. It's only fair that you pay your share based on what you use. The word fair should have been my second red flag. Maria had taken some business classes at community college and loved using fancy words to make normal conversation sound official and impossible to argue with. She pushed a paper toward me, showing monthly costs with my portion circled in bright red ink. $400 for sleeping space on the couch, $150 for utilities, $350 for food and supplies. $900 total, which happened to be exactly $100 less than my monthly Social Security check. This seems like a lot, I said carefully. I'm just one person, and I'm at the senior center most days. But you use the kitchen, the shower, the electricity, Maria replied quickly. And when Diego's cousins bring their kids over, you're here taking up space and using resources all weekend long. Diego's cousins visited maybe twice a month with their toddlers, and I loved playing with those babies. They reminded me why being a grandmother was supposed to be one of life's sweetest joys. But Maria saw everything differently. It's exhausting having little kids running around here, she complained to her sister on the phone one day, not knowing I could hear from the kitchen. And with Helen taking up the living room, it's like living in a daycare center that doesn't pay me. I signed their rental agreement because what choice did a 72-year-old woman have? Finding my own apartment with only $100 left each month wasn't realistic. And Diego seemed genuinely worried about my safety, even if his wife saw me as nothing more than a walking wallet. This is just until we figure out something better, Mama, Diego promised when I looked uncertain about the arrangement. Just until we find a solution that works for everyone. Their solution, as it turned out, involved me becoming more invisible and more useful every single day. By fall, I was doing all the grocery shopping, most of the cooking, and all the dishes. When Diego's cousins visited, I was the automatic babysitter while Diego and Maria went out for date nights or weekend trips. When they had Maria's friends over for parties, I was expected to serve snacks and drinks, then hide in the bedroom so the young people could have their sophisticated adult conversations. The final straw came in November during one of Maria's birthday parties. I'd spent all afternoon making her favorite appetizers and cleaning the apartment until it sparkled, then spent the evening refilling drinks and emptying ashtrays with a fake smile glued to my face. As I was collecting empty bottles from the balcony, I heard Maria talking to her friend Jessica through the open sliding door. "It's actually worked out amazing," Maria was saying. "Helen does all the housework, watches kids whenever we need her to, and her Social Security basically pays our utilities and groceries. It's like having a live-in maid who pays us for the job." Jessica laughed like this was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. "That's genius. You should teach a class on how to make money off your in-laws." Standing there with a trash bag full of their party garbage, listening to my living situation being discussed like a clever money-making scheme, something clicked into place inside my chest. This wasn't temporary housing during grief. This wasn't family helping family through hard times. This was straight-up exploitation, cold and calculated. But I didn't make a scene that night. I just finished cleaning up, said goodnight politely, and went to my couch. After all, I still had my weekly trip to Garcia's market to look forward to. And sometimes, when you're patient enough, the universe finds a way to balance the scales in ways you never could have imagined. December rolled in with unusual heat and Maria's announcement that they were converting the storage closet into a private room for me. She presented this like it was some amazing upgrade, complete with curtains for privacy and a small shelf for my belongings. "You'll have so much more privacy," she explained, showing me the closet. That was barely big enough for a twin mattress. Your own space, your own door, almost like your own tiny apartment. The storage closet. They wanted to move me into a storage closet. Diego stood nearby, looking uncomfortable but supportive of his wife's brilliant idea. "The handyman says he can install a small window, and you'll have that shelf, so you won't need to keep your stuff in our living room anymore." Translation: they wanted to hide me away completely, eliminate even the minor inconvenience of seeing their cash cow existing in there. Shared living space. "What if I don't want to move into a closet?" I asked quietly. Maria's sweet smile got a little tighter around the edges. "Well, Helen, we've been thinking about that too. This arrangement has been nice, but we're starting to feel like we need more space as a married couple. The closet room would give you privacy, while keeping us all close together. And if I wanted to find somewhere else to live?" The silence that followed felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Diego cleared his throat like he was about to deliver bad news. "Mama, we've gotten used to having you here. Your family. But if you wanted to look into other options, we'd understand." Other options. At my age, with $100 a month left over after paying them, my other options were limited to the county nursing home with a 3-year waiting list or a studio apartment in the worst part of town. They had me trapped in their web, and they knew it perfectly. That Tuesday, I walked to Garcia's market with more purpose than I'd felt in months. The December sun was beating down on the sidewalks, making everything shimmer like a mirage. But I wasn't interested in mirages anymore. I wanted solid ground under my feet. "Hot day for walking, Senora Martinez," Roberto called as I pushed through the glass doors into the blessed air conditioning. "I've walked through hotter," I replied, pulling my $5 from my purse. "Same numbers as always?" "Same as always." As Roberto printed my ticket, I found myself thinking about those numbers with fresh eyes. 8 for the day Carlos proposed, back when I believed love conquered everything. Diego about respect and hard work. Maybe it was time for those numbers to mean something completely different. I tucked the ticket into my wallet next to Carlos's old Medicare card that I couldn't bear to throw away. "Cross your fingers for me, Roberto," I said, same as I'd said for 28 years. "Always do, Senora Martinez. Maybe this week brings good luck." Walking home through the heat, I passed a group of kids playing basketball at the community center. Their laughter bounced off the concrete walls, Pure and simple happiness, without any hidden agenda. I remember Diego at that age, how he'd practice free throws until his hands were raw, and never wanted to come inside even when dinner was getting cold. Where had that sweet boy disappeared to? When had he become someone who could look his mother in the eye and explain why living in a storage closet was really for her own good? Back at the apartment, Maria was on the phone with the handyman. "Yes, we need the absolute cheapest materials," she was saying. "It doesn't need to be nice. It's just for one old person. Just for one old person." That's what I'd become in my son's home. Not Helen Martinez, who'd raised 3 children and buried one husband and survived 72 years of joy and heartbreak and everything in between. Just one old person to be managed as cheaply and quietly as possible. I went to my couch while I still had a couch and sat by the window watching kids play in the courtyard. In my wallet, my lottery ticket sat patiently, carrying those familiar numbers that had never let me down, even when everyone else had. Sometimes justice takes its sweet time getting ready. But when it finally arrives, it comes with everything you never dared to hope for. The winning numbers were announced Tuesday night at 11:02 p.m. on Channel 4. I was lying on my couch reading a romance novel about a woman who won the lottery and found true love when the lottery segment interrupted my show. Tonight's California Superlotto jackpot reaches $53 million, the handsome news anchor announced. The winning numbers are 8, 15, 22, 29, 33, and the mega number is 11. For a long moment, my brain refused to understand what I'd just heard. Those were my numbers. My exact numbers, the ones I'd been playing faithfully for 28 years. I scrambled for the remote, rewinding the broadcast to make sure I'd heard correctly. 8, 15, 22, 29, 33, and mega 11. My hands shook like autumn leaves as I reached for my purse, digging out the lottery ticket with fingers that suddenly felt ancient and clumsy. There they were, printed in neat black numbers. 8-15-22-29-33 and B11. $53 million. I sat there staring at that little piece of paper, waiting for reality to catch up with the impossible. After 28 years of hoping and $5 investments, I had finally won. Not just one, I had won big enough to change everything forever. My first thought was to run to Diego and Maria's bedroom, wake them up, share this incredible miracle with the people who were supposed to love me most. Then I remembered where I was sleeping and why I was there and how I'd gotten to this point in my life. On their couch, paying them $900 a month while working as their unpaid housekeeper and babysitter, scheduled to be moved into their storage closet because my presence in their living space had become inconvenient for their lifestyle. Maybe I should keep this information private for just a little while, at least until I figure out what having $53 million meant for the rest of my story. I slipped the ticket back into my wallet and turned off the television. Sleep was impossible, but I lay there in the dark for hours planning. By sunrise, I had the outline of a plan that would have made Carlos proud. Wednesday morning started with the usual chaos. Diego was rushing to get ready for his early shift at the electronics store while Maria complained about her upcoming double shift at the department store. They were both stressed about money, as always, which made their treatment of me even more painful to watch. "Helen, can you pick up my prescription today?" Maria called from the bathroom where she was doing her makeup. "The pharmacy closes early on Wednesdays." "Of course," I replied, same as I always did. Diego was in the kitchen gulping coffee and checking his phone for missed messages. It was during this perfectly normal Wednesday morning routine that Maria decided to tidy up the living room, which included going through my purse to look for the grocery coupons she'd asked me to cut out yesterday. "Helen, where did you put those detergent coupons?" she called, dumping my belongings onto the coffee table. "They should be in the front pocket," I called back, focused on folding the blanket I used. "Every night. Found them. And, oh wow, what's this?" Something in Maria's voice made me turn around. She was standing in the living room holding my lottery ticket, her face white as fresh paint. "Helen, did you buy a lottery ticket?" My stomach dropped like a stone, but I kept my voice steady. "I buy one every week. Same numbers for 28 years." Maria was staring at the ticket like it might explode. Helen, do you know what the winning numbers were last night? Before I could answer, she was grabbing her phone, typing frantically. Oh my God. Oh my God. Diego. Her scream brought Diego running from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, hair still messy from sleep. What's wrong? Did someone get hurt? The lottery ticket. Maria shoved the ticket at him with trembling hands. Look at the numbers. Look at last night's drawing. Diego took the ticket, squinting at the numbers like he was trying to solve a puzzle. His squint turned into a frown as Maria showed him her phone screen with the winning combination. The silence in the apartment stretched like a rubber band about to snap, broken only by the sound of our neighbor's dog barking in the courtyard. Finally, Diego looked up at me, his expression unreadable. Mama, do you understand what this means? I understood exactly what it meant. The only question was whether they understood what it meant for them. The next 2 hours were complete chaos, and I watched it all happen from my spot on the couch like I was watching a movie about someone else's family. Maria was pacing around the apartment, phone glued to her ear, calling what sounded like every person she'd ever met in her entire life. $53 million. Yes, million with an M. We won the lottery. We're rich. That was interesting. We won. Diego had taken the ticket from Maria and was studying it like he was looking for hidden messages, comparing the numbers on his phone over and over again. This is real, he kept saying to himself. This is actually happening to us. The kids from the courtyard had pressed their faces against our sliding glass door, sensing something exciting was happening inside. Are you famous now? One little girl asked through the glass. We're millionaires, sweetheart, Maria sang, dancing around the living room. We'll never worry about money again. I found myself thinking about Carlos, wondering what he'd say about the scene. Probably something wise about counting chickens before they hatch, or maybe something about people showing their true colors when money gets involved. Carlos always was smart about reading people's real intentions. Mama, Diego said, still holding my ticket like it was made of pure gold. We need to call a lawyer and an accountant and probably a financial advisor. There are taxes and legal stuff and claiming procedures and everything. And we should definitely call that handyman and cancel the closet conversion, Maria interrupted. I mean, if we're millionaires, we don't need to worry about space anymore, right? The closet again. Even in the middle of what they thought was life-changing good fortune, they were still thinking about that storage closet they'd wanted to stuff me into. Actually, Maria continued, her voice taking on that business-like tone she used when she was solving problems, we should probably think bigger than this apartment. With this kind of money, we could buy a house, something with a real guest room, or, her voice got brighter, we could look into one of those luxury senior communities for Helen. The expensive ones with activities and medical staff. And everything she could ever want. And there it was. The money was going to buy them a fancier way to get rid of me permanently. Diego nodded like this was the most brilliant idea he'd ever heard. That's perfect, Mama. You'd probably be happier with people your own age, right? And now we can afford one of the really nice places. I watched my son and daughter-in-law make plans for my future using money they assumed belonged to them, solving a problem they created by treating me like a burden they had to manage. The irony was so beautiful it almost made me smile. There's just one tiny detail we should probably talk about, I said quietly. Both of them stopped talking and turned to look at me, faces expectant and slightly annoyed, like adults listening to a child who is interrupting grown-up conversation. The lottery ticket, I continued calmly, has my name on it. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the shocked silence of unexpected good news. This was the terrified silence of people realizing they'd made a very big assumption. What do you mean? Maria asked slowly. I held out my hand, and after a long hesitation, Diego placed the ticket in my palm. I mean, I said, looking down at those familiar numbers that had just transformed from hope into power, that I bought this ticket with my money, from my purse, using the numbers I've played for 28 years. That makes it mine. Maria's face went through several fascinating color changes, from white to red to something close to green. But you live here. We're family. That money changes everything for all of us. No, I said, standing up from my couch with more strength than I'd felt in years. It changes everything for me. The look of understanding that crossed their faces was something I knew I'd remember for the rest of my life. The exact moment they realized that their unpaid housekeeper, their future closet dweller, their reliable source of monthly rent money, had just become independently wealthy. And they were about to discover that $53 million could buy a lot more than a nice house. It could buy freedom. It could buy dignity. And it could buy the sweetest justice an old woman had ever served to ungrateful children. The apartment got so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming and kids playing soccer in the courtyard outside. Diego and Maria stood frozen like someone had just told them the laws of physics had stopped working. "Mama," Diego said carefully, like he was talking to someone who might be dangerous. "Let's not get carried away here. Yes, technically the ticket has your name on it, but we're family. We share things. We take care of each other." I almost burst out laughing. Take care of each other? Like when they took care of me by charging me $900 a month to sleep on their couch. Like when they took care of me by planning to move me into their storage closet? You're absolutely right, I said sweetly. We do take care of each other. That's why I've been taking care of you, by paying almost all of your monthly expenses while doing all your housework and errands for free. Maria's brain was working overtime. I could practically see the gears turning behind her eyes as she calculated, strategized, looked for an angle to work. "Helen, sweetie," she said in the voice she used for her most difficult customers at work, "I think there's been a big misunderstanding about our living arrangement. The monthly contribution you make isn't rent. It's just your fair share of household expenses. We never thought of you as a tenant. Your family. Is that right?" I tucked the lottery ticket back into my wallet with slow, deliberate movements. "Then I guess you won't mind if I stop making monthly contributions immediately, since I'm family and not a renter." Diego stepped forward with his hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "Mama, let's everybody take a deep breath here. This is huge news. Life-changing news. We need to think through all the implications very carefully." "Oh, I've been thinking," I said. "I've been thinking all night since I saw those numbers, and I've reached some very interesting conclusions." Maria's fake smile was starting to crack around the edges like old paint. "What kind of conclusions?" "Well, for starters, I've concluded that $53 million is enough money to live very comfortably for the rest of my life without depending on anyone else for housing or anything else." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees in seconds. "You're not serious," Maria whispered. "You wouldn't just abandon us. Not after everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done for me. Like taking most of my monthly income while treating me like unpaid domestic help. Like planning to hide me away in their storage closet because my presence in their home had become inconvenient. Like discussing my financial contributions at parties as if I were some kind of clever investment strategy." "I'm completely serious," I said. "In fact, I'm planning to drive to Sacramento tomorrow morning to claim my prize, and then I'm going to start looking for a place of my own." Diego was starting to panic. I could see it in the way he kept running his hands through his hair and pacing around the small kitchen. "Mama, you can't make major decisions like this when you're emotional. This is too big, too complicated. You need help managing this kind of money." "Help from who?" "You." "Yes. From us. We're your family." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. When had Diego become someone who thought I was too stupid to manage my own life? When had he decided that being my child gave him the right to control my choices? "Diego," I said quietly, "when your father was dying, do you know what he made me promise?" Both of them went completely still. "He made me promise that I would never let anyone take advantage of my good heart. He said people would try." especially family, because they'd think I was too nice or too weak to stand up for myself. The silence stretched until Maria finally found her voice. Helen, I think you're completely overreacting to what was basically a simple miscommunication. Am I? I reached into my purse and pulled out a small spiral notebook. Let me share some interesting numbers with you. Over the past 18 months, I've paid you $16,200 in household expenses. I've provided approximately 1,000 hours of unpaid housework. I've cooked about 400 meals and done roughly 600 loads of laundry. Maria's face was getting redder with each number I recited. In return, you've given me a couch to sleep on that you were planning to replace with a storage closet and the privilege of listening to you describe my living situation as entertainment for your friends. That's not fair, Diego protested. We've given you a home when you had nowhere else to go. You've given me room and board in exchange for payment and labor that exceeds the value of what you provided by about $15,000. That's not generosity, son. That's exploitation. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire. And now, I continued, standing up and smoothing my blouse, I have the resources to explore other options. Thursday morning arrived with Maria in full damage control mode. She'd obviously spent the night planning her strategy because she met me at the kitchen table with a thick folder and her most professional expression. I've been doing research, she announced, opening the folder to reveal printed articles about lottery winners. Did you know that 80% of lottery winners end up broke within 5 years? I pour myself coffee and prepared to enjoy the show. Is that a fact? Absolutely. The statistics are terrifying. Bad investments, poor financial decisions, family members taking advantage. It's a complete disaster for most people. She flipped through pages of highlighted articles. That's why you need professional guidance. Family guidance. Diego appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking like he'd spent the night worrying instead of sleeping. Mama, Maria's right. This is way too big for any one person to handle alone, especially someone your age. No offense, Helen, Maria added helpfully, but managing $53 million requires expertise in tax law, investment, strategy, estate planning. It's incredibly complex. I took a sip of coffee and studied their worried faces. They'd clearly spent hours preparing this intervention, working out their talking points and strategy. It was almost sweet how much effort they were putting into convincing me I was incompetent to manage my own good fortune. You've put a lot of thought into this, I observed. We care about you, Diego said. We don't want to see you make mistakes that could destroy your financial security. What kind of mistakes? Maria leaned forward, sensing an opportunity. Well, for example, buying property without understanding the tax implications. Or making large purchases without considering how they affect your long-term financial stability. Or trusting the wrong people with your money. The wrong people? I repeated, like who? Like financial advisors who charge huge fees or investment managers who push risky products or, her voice dropped meaningfully, or family members who might try to take advantage of your generosity. Maria said this without any sense of irony whatsoever. I set down my coffee cup with careful precision. Maria, let me ask you something. When I moved in here, did you research the average cost of senior housing in our area? Her eyes flickered with something that might have been shame. I don't know what you mean. I mean, did you look up what it would cost me to live somewhere else so you could price my contributions fairly? Diego shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mama, we never thought of it like that. Because I did some research yesterday. I continued. The average cost of a private room in a good assisted living facility around here is about $1,400 a month. That includes all meals, housekeeping, activities, and medical support. Maria had gone very quiet. You've been charging me $900 for a couch and the privilege of doing my own cooking, cleaning, and childcare. That's not family helping family. That's a business arrangement, and not even a fair one. It's not about money, Diego said desperately. It's about family, about staying close together. Is it? Then why were you planning to move me into your storage closet? Neither of them had an answer for that question. I closed Maria's research folder and slid it back across the table. I appreciate your concern about lottery winners going bankrupt, but I think you're worried about the wrong person making poor financial decisions. Maria's professional mask was starting to slip. What's that supposed to mean? It means that for the past 18 months, I've been subsidizing your lifestyle to the tune of about $15,000. Meanwhile, you've been planning apartment improvements, taking weekend trips, and buying new clothes while charging your elderly mother-in-law below market rent for above-market labor. Diego looked genuinely confused. Above market labor, Mama? This is a nice apartment, I said, standing up from the table, but it comes with no privacy, no independence, and landlords who treat me like hired help. But that's all about to change. Where are you going? Maria asked sharply. To call my attorney. The look of pure panic that crossed both their faces was something I'd treasure forever. By Thursday afternoon, news of my lottery win had spread through our neighborhood like wildfire in summer. Roberto from Garcia's Market had apparently figured out the connection when he saw the winning numbers announced, and by lunchtime, there were 2 news vans parked outside the apartment complex. I watched from the living room window as reporters knocked on doors, asking neighbors about the mystery lottery winner. Maria had spent an hour getting ready, curling her hair and applying makeup like she was preparing for a movie audition, clearly hoping to get on camera. Mrs. Martinez is resting and can't do interviews right now, she told the Channel 4 reporter through a crack in the door. But as her family, we're just incredibly happy about this blessing in all of our lives. All of our lives. Maria was already claiming ownership of my good fortune. My phone had been ringing nonstop since noon. Old friends from church, former neighbors from the house Carlos and I had shared, even my sister Rosa from Phoenix calling to congratulate me and ask what I planned to do with the money. What I planned to do was meet with Patricia Gonzalez, the lawyer Carlos. There are reporters everywhere. They'll swarm you like bees. I have an appointment, I said calmly. Can it wait? At least until this media circus dies down. Diego appeared next to his wife, both of them forming a human wall between me and my freedom. Mama, be smart about this. You're not ready to handle this kind of attention. Let us help you manage the situation. Manage. Another one of Maria's business words. I've been managing my own affairs for 72 years, I said. I think I can handle a walk to my car. But when I opened the front door, I could see why they were concerned. There were indeed reporters filling the courtyard, cameras and microphones ready for action. The moment they spotted me, they rushed forward like kids running toward an ice cream truck. Mrs. Martinez, how does it feel to win $53 million? What are your plans for the money? Is it true you've been playing the same numbers for almost 30 years? I paused on the doorstep, looking out at all those eager faces. Behind me, I could feel Diego and Maria hovering, probably praying I'd turn around and go back inside where they could continue their campaign to control my newfound wealth. Instead, I took a deep breath and walked down the steps with all the dignity I could gather. I'm very blessed by this gift, I told the reporters, stopping next to my old Honda. As for what I plan to do with the money, I'm going to use it to live independently and make my own choices for the first time in 3 years. What do you mean by that, Mrs. Martinez? I looked back at the apartment where Diego and Maria stood watching from the doorway, and something settled deep inside my chest. Something that felt like courage and truth and long overdue honesty. I mean that sometimes in life you discover that the people you trust most have been taking advantage of your kindness, and sometimes God gives you the strength to do something about it. The reporters smelled a bigger story brewing, pushing closer with their equipment. Can you tell us more about that? I've been living with my son and daughter-in-law for 3 years, paying them $900 a month while doing all their housework and errands for free. They were planning to move me into their storage closet because having me in their living room had become inconvenient. I could hear Maria's shocked gasp from the doorway. But now that I have the means to live on my own, I'll be finding my own place somewhere I can visit my son as a guest instead of paying him to be his employee. Are you saying your own family was taking advantage of you? The nearest reporter pushed his microphone closer to my face. I looked directly into the camera, thinking about all the other grandmothers who might be watching, people who might be in similar situations with their own children. I'm saying that family should be about love and respect, not business deals. And I'm saying that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, no matter how old you are. More questions came flying at me, but I'd said what needed saying. I got into my Honda and drove away, leaving Diego and Maria to explain themselves to the cameras. In my rearview mirror, I could see Maria frantically trying to do damage control, probably spinning some story about family misunderstandings. But the truth was already spreading across the county, and this was just the beginning of my new story. Patricia Gonzalez's law office was like stepping into a calm oasis after a desert storm. At 68, Patricia had the kind of steady wisdom that comes from decades of helping people through life's biggest challenges. "Helen," she said, standing up from her desk with a genuine smile. "Congratulations. Carlos would be so proud of you." "Thank you." I settled into the comfortable chair where Carlos and I had sat so many times, discussing insurance and wills and all the practical details of building a life together. "I saw the news interview," Patricia continued, her expression growing serious. "That was quite a statement you made. Was it hard to tell the truth like that?" "It was the easiest thing I've done in years," I replied honestly. She opened a manila folder and pulled out a yellow notepad. "Now, let's talk about protecting your interests. Have you claimed the prize yet?" "I'm driving to Sacramento tomorrow morning to meet with the lottery officials." "Excellent. I'd recommend the annual payments instead of the lump sum for tax reasons, and we'll need to set up some protective trusts." We spent the next hour going over financial strategies, tax planning, and legal protections. Patricia explained everything in language I could understand, never once acting like I was too old or too simple to comprehend the details. It was while we were discussing housing options that Patricia surprised me with news I never expected. "Helen, there's something I need to share with you. Something Carlos asked me to keep private unless certain circumstances came up." My heart started beating faster. "What kind of circumstances?" "If your family ever tried to exploit you financially." Patricia opened another file, thick with documents. "Carlos was more aware of Diego and Maria's situation than you knew. He suspected they were planning to have you move in with them after his death, not out of love, but out of financial desperation." The room started spinning around me. Carlos knew. He hired someone to look into their finances about 8 months before he passed away. He was worried about what would happen to you. Patricia pulled out a folder of papers. "Helen, Diego and Maria are drowning in debt. Credit cards, personal loans, their car payments are behind. They've been living on borrowed money for over 2 years." I stared at the documents, seeing rows of numbers that told the story of financial recklessness and desperation. "Carlos wanted you to have this information if you ever needed it to protect yourself," Patricia continued gently. "He also wanted you to know about the life insurance policy." "What life insurance policy?" Patricia's smile was sad but warm. "The one he bought specifically to make sure you'd have resources if Diego and Maria became a problem. $300,000 paid directly to a trust in your name. It's been sitting there earning interest for 3 years, waiting for you to need it. $300,000. Carlos had been protecting me from heaven. He knew," I whispered. "He knew this would happen. He loved you enough to prepare for it." Patricia closed the file softly. "The question now is what you want to do with this knowledge." I thought about Diego blocking my path that morning, insisting he only wanted to help me manage my money. I thought about Maria with her folders of research about lottery winners going broke, positioning herself as my financial savior while she'd been draining my bank account for years. I thought about Carlos, spending his final months not just fighting cancer, but fighting to protect me from our own son. "Patricia," I said finally, "I want to have a family meeting tonight. I want Diego and Maria to understand exactly what their financial situation looks like and exactly how much their mother-in-law knows about everything." "Are you certain?" "Once you reveal this information, there's no going back to the way things were." I stood up from the leather chair, feeling stronger and more determined than I had in years. "Patricia, I've spent 3 years being treated like a convenient ATM by people who were supposed to love me. My husband saw this coming and tried to protect me from his own grave. I think it's time Diego and Maria learned what happens when you underestimate a Martinez woman. The look of respect in Patricia's eyes told me everything I needed to know. Carlos would indeed be proud. The family meeting was set for 8 p.m. I'd spent the afternoon preparing with Patricia's guidance, organizing documents and planning exactly what I needed to say. Diego and Maria thought they were coming to discuss my outburst with the reporters and figure out how to manage the media attention going forward. They had no idea they were walking into a reckoning that had been 3 years in the making. Maria arrived first, carrying a laptop bag and wearing her most serious business outfit. Diego brought flowers and his most apologetic expression. "Mama, about what you said to those reporters," Diego began as they settled onto their couch. "We understand you were feeling overwhelmed by everything." "I wasn't overwhelmed," I interrupted calmly. I was finally telling the truth. Maria opened her laptop. "With practiced efficiency, Helen, we've put together a comprehensive media strategy that addresses your concerns while protecting the family's privacy." "Before we discuss protecting the family," I said, reaching for the folder Patricia had given me, "I think we should discuss protecting me." I placed the first document on their coffee table. Diego glanced down at it and went pale as milk. "What is this?" Maria asked, though her voice suggested she suspected the answer. "It's a complete financial analysis of your household, compiled by an investigator your father hired before he died." I watched both of them freeze completely. He was worried about what would happen to me after his death, so he did some research into your circumstances. Diego was staring at the papers like they were on fire. "Dad hired someone to spy on us?" "To protect me," I corrected. Which, as it turns out, was completely necessary. I pulled out another document. "You owe $52,000 in credit card debt across 8 different cards. Your car loan is 3 months behind. Maria, your department store job barely covers your personal expenses, and Diego, you've been borrowing from your 401k to pay bills." Maria's confident mask cracked like an eggshell. "How dare you invade our privacy? The same way you invaded mine when you decided I was too incompetent to manage a lottery ticket I bought with my own money." I kept my voice steady and calm. "For 3 years, you've been using my Social Security to cover your debts while treating me like unpaid domestic help." Diego found his voice. "Mama, everyone has financial struggles. Not everyone charges their widowed mother-in-law $900 a month to sleep on their couch while doing all the housework for free." I placed another document on the table. "This is what my living situation has actually cost me compared to what it would cost to live independently. You've been overcharging me by about $500 a month while getting roughly $1,200 worth of unpaid labor." The silence that followed was deafening. "That's over $20,000 a year you've been taking from me," I continued. "Almost $65,000 over 3 years. From your own mother." Maria was crying now, but they were the kind of tears people cry when they're caught red-handed, not when they're truly sorry. "We never meant it to be like that," Diego said desperately. "We just needed help and you were family and we thought—" "And you thought I was too old and too grateful to figure out what you were doing." I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. "But your father knew. He saw right through both of you, and he made sure I'd have the resources to protect myself when I finally woke up." I placed the final document on the table. "This is a life insurance policy Carlos took out 3 years ago specifically for this situation. $300,000 in a trust account, earning interest, waiting for me to need it." Diego was shaking his head like he could make reality disappear. "I don't understand. Dad never said anything. Because he hoped he was wrong about you. He hoped that when the time came, you'd treat me with the love and respect he'd taught you to show family." I picked up my purse and headed for the door. "Instead, you treated me like a business investment that paid monthly dividends." "Where are you going?" Maria called after me. "To start my real life. I've put a deposit on a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment at Golden Years Community. Full kitchen, private balcony, my own parking space, and a monthly fee that's $200 less than what I was paying to be your tenant." I paused at the front door, looking back at the two people who'd spent 3 years taking advantage of my grief and loneliness. Oh, and one more thing. Since you'll no longer have my income to help with your expenses, you might want to start figuring out how you'll manage that $52,000 in credit card debt. I hear financial stress can be really hard on marriages. As I walked out to my Honda, I could hear Maria crying and Diego trying to calm her down. But their problems were no longer my responsibility. I had $53 million, a husband who'd loved me enough to protect me from beyond the grave, and the rest of my life to live exactly how I chose. Carlos always said that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Turns out he was right about that, too. Thanks for watching Her Voice Unfolds. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your own story in the comments. Every voice deserves to be heard. 3 months later, I'm sitting on my private balcony at Golden Years Community, watching the sunset paint the California mountains purple and gold. My 2-bedroom apartment is everything I dreamed it could be: spacious, peaceful, and completely mine. The monthly fee includes all utilities, 3 meals a day if I want them, weekly housekeeping, and a shuttle service that takes residents anywhere we need to go. Best of all, I'm surrounded by people who chose to be here, not people who see me as a source of income. Diego calls sometimes. Maria doesn't. I heard through my neighbor Mrs. Chun that they had to move to a smaller apartment across town, and that Maria took a second job to help with their debt payments. Part of me feels sad about how everything ended, but mostly I feel free. Free from walking on eggshells, free from being treated like a burden, free from pretending that exploitation was love. I've donated $2 million to a foundation that helps elderly people escape financial abuse by family members. Patricia helped me set up the legal structure, and we've already helped 12 seniors find safe, independent housing. It turns out I'm not the only grandmother whose children saw dollar signs instead of family. The lottery money is invested wisely, managed by professionals Patricia recommended, and earning enough interest to support several lifetimes of comfortable living. I bought a new car, nothing fancy, just a reliable Honda that starts every time and doesn't make me dependent on anyone for transportation. I've taken 2 trips. Sometimes people ask if I miss living with Diego and Maria, if I regret telling the truth so publicly. The answer is simple. You can't miss something that was never really there. What I thought was family love was actually a business arrangement disguised as kindness. What I thought was temporary help during grief was actually permanent exploitation disguised as generosity. But here's what I've learned about second chances and lottery tickets and standing up for yourself when you're 72 years old. It's never too late to stop accepting less than you deserve. It's never too late to recognize when love has conditions and strings attached. And it's never too late to discover that the person you've been waiting for to save you was yourself all along. Carlos was right about justice having perfect timing. He was also right about something else he used to tell me. Helen Mija, the best investment you can make is in your own dignity. Everything else is just money. I've got both now, the money and the dignity. And I'm finally living the life Carlos and I always dreamed about. One where I wake up grateful instead of resentful, where I make choices instead of having choices made for me, where I'm valued for who I am instead of what I can provide. The lottery ticket changed my circumstances, but choosing to use it changed my life. Sometimes the biggest win isn't the money. It's finding the courage to claim what was always rightfully yours. Thanks for listening to my story, and remember, your voice matters, your choices matter, and you're never too old to start over.